Oh, back in time, BassMaster Magazine's February 1975. And the cover is Tommy Martin from Hemp Hill, Texas, winning that classic. Now, this classic was actually in the fall of '74, but they weren't real timely back then on immediately getting it into their magazines. And that was my very first classic. It gets me kind of excited even going back in time to revisit what I was doing. And the one thing that most people don't know.
Are you on that cover?
No, well, I'm in that picture, but I'm not sure I can figure out which one it is. I didn't like shotgun starts, so I didn't like to try to outrace everybody, because if you're ever in a shotgun start, there's only two places to be. You got to have the fastest boat and you're the first, or you need to just have the slowest boat and be last, because in the middle was a horsing machine. I mean, it was crazily dangerous. And I'm in here, and I know back then how nervous I was. You know, I on the verge of throwing up or trying to find a porta potty. You know, one or the other. So, but Tommy Martin, and again, I said earlier that we're all products of those that came before us. And he probably played at that time the second most important person in creating Rick Clunn, because him and his other angler, I'll mention them a little bit, but they fished fast. You know, and the old saying back then was, you know, you got to be patient and you got to do this and that. These guys, I mean, where most anglers would cover 10 yards, they'd cover 100 in that same time frame, and never quit. They'd be making just as many casts at the end of the day as they were making at the very beginning. So and Tommy was one of those, and he always stayed in really good shape. I mean, there was another interesting thing about Tommy later on. I found out my dad worked for a Chevrolet dealer, and he worked in the parts department, okay? And he worked in LaPorte, Texas. Found out that Tommy's dad had the exact same job at a Chevrolet dealer in Texas City, Texas. And those two towns were not 50 miles apart. And it was just, and of course, like my dad, Tommy's dad was his biggest fan. And so anyway, here we go, and this was the first classic in. Roger Moore left, you know, and he's the first Evel Knievel of our sport, dressing-wise. You'll see how most of the rest of us dressed. He always looked like Evel Knievel, and he was a character. And one of his biggest accomplishments is he went, and I don't know the exact number anymore, but he went a tremendous number of tournament days in a row and had a limit every single day. And this is a 10-fish limit, this tournament. You know, Tommy beat him, but Tommy didn't even have a limit. Tommy had 17 fish. Roger had, you know, a limit every day, 10-fish limit. And here's the first classic, and I'm sure I'm in this picture somewhere, maybe hiding because I don't think I had a great day. But, and this is, I find this interesting because I just watched cast on TV that they did a kind of a historical deal on the classics, and how it went from mostly just Chamber of Commerce people, wives and family members at the classic, to nowadays auditoriums of tens of thousands of people, you know, at the classic. But still, it meant so much to us even back then. We were going out of Joe Wheeler State Park in Lake Wheeler, Alabama. And again, I was on that first flight where when we got in the air, he opened Ray, you know, had it in a secret envelope, you know, that had been hidden and had security guards, you know, watching it for, he claims, for days. And then he opens up the envelope and pulls it out. We're going to Joe Wheeler, Alabama. Now, first thing I heard was one of the anglers on there sitting close to me. He didn't say it loud enough that everybody could hear, but he said, "That lake sucks." so that didn't start me off with a great mental attitude.
tournament would have been, the weigh-in would be held in a parking lot?
That was held at the state park, a brand new Joe Wheeler State Park. So we were having it kind of there.
Right there by the water?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, see, this dock also, another thing, you know, I had the world record. I caught the world record in this tournament. I drew a 4 sports a field guy, and it was the second day of the tournament. I was on a crank by a boat dock, and I hooked this big fish, and it ran. I mean, he run off over here and run over here and run over here, and finally it came up, and I hooked the middle of the dock person's lawn chair that had fallen in the lake. And of course, it's moving and veering back and forth. And anyway, you know, had a little bit of a laugh about it. I didn't, but my sports writer from Sports Afield or Outdoor Life, I don't remember, did. And later on, several months later, the Sports Afield magazine used to have in the very back page little clips about things that happened fishing. And it goes, Rick Clunn catches world record lawn chair. So, oh, wow. That was my first publicity I think I ever had gotten. Again, here's Roger in his outfit. You can see a little bit better than now.
Did you guys make fun of him?
No, I liked him. He was, that's one of the things.
Made fun of the outfit, not the man.
And here's Fagerstrom that was showing you how to cast. He drew Rayo Breckenridge, the year before's classic winner. And there's Big Tom Man using his big spinning, open face spinning rod, for one of the very few that did that. And then this just tells you how Tommy did it. I mean, you know, all the things he did. And again, he won that classic throwing a spinnerbait and crankbaits. And of course, I said, you know, I'm a product of that man, partially anyway. And this one here had press observers. Okay, that was who Ray and Bob Cobb would invite all these media from different papers all across the country to come, and they could fish. And some of them were pretty good fishermen, and some of them I hated to have in the boat with me because they were pretty aggressive. You know, I have to admit, I got into it with one of the Sports Afield. Young, he was a new sports field and stream writer, and I literally got into it with him. I mean, because I said, this is my living. He said, well, I'm here to make money too. They got like $500 if they had you know the big fish, and there was a lot of them that were my kind of favorite ones. Most of them were just incredible. So it was kind of fun. And Fred David from New York had the record number of lost lures of all the riders, and he'd fish. I mean, he talked in the history of the classic. Okay, he came to everyone because most pros, when the rider got hung up, was not going to waste his time and go back and get it for you. So you had to break it off. And Fred broke off 34 lures in one day, in one of the days. And here we go into all the classic contenders, and so many you know, anglers that I. Here's Rick Clunn, first classic ever, 21st place. And then as you go up, you just go, wow, look at these names. I mean, some of them you would not recognize. Johnny Morris was 13th, and this was, I think, his 3rd classic in a row.
Read like the top 10.
Top 10, Bill Dance, Ricky Green, Bobby Metters from Louisiana, Roland Martin, Tommy Martin, Tom Mann, Elroy Kruger, Al Linder, J.D. Stevens and John Powell, and Bobby Murray below that, John, you know, so there are some real characters. And now this is my favorite page, because I'm definitely, if I had to say I'm a product of which anglers am I most, Tommy Martin, and this was the best, and most of you will never know him. Elroy Kruger. Till this day, I've never met an angler as good an angler as he was. He was a legend in the San Antonio, Texas area, and the San Antonio Bass Club. Texas, again, had his club probably had 400 members. Austin had 300. Dallas had that many. Houston had that many. And they literally, and he was one of the most creative, innovative anglers I've ever been around. Some of the things he would do, nobody had ever done before. So, and then Al Linder here. And Al Linder, like I said, to me, included with Roland Martin there, were the ones that really pushed the art and the science of fishing, which is so, so critical. Because you had to do that to remove luck from the equation. If you weren't using the art and the science, then luck was going to play a huge, huge role in your eventual success. Oh, there's my picture. That's why what am I to have? And yeah, I'm not doing well, but I'm happy. So
I'm just happy to be here.
I'm just happy to be here.
That's a good picture.
And that was my first boat sponsor. That's one of the things I feel the guiltiest about in my whole career. They're the first ones that believed in me, and I wasn't a promoter. I wasn't a salesperson. They made Falcon boats out of Houston, Texas, and in fact, the first boat I ever bought was a little Falcon waterbug, and I had to build most of the decks in it and stuff, and it was a mess. My wife can confirm my building techniques are not an art and science. But then eventually, when they sponsored me, they put me in a Falcon Tiger, and it was probably the best rough water boat for those early boats of any of them. And the boat that they made a Falcon Grande for the saltwater, and it probably Falcon Grandes became famous on Lake Texoma, because all the guides there do that lake could get rough were using them. And here is the final standings in the Classic that year. And actually, I did better than I thought I did. Like I said, it was a 10 fish limit. Tommy won it with 17. Roger didn't have a limit every day, so his record must not have started. That would have been 30 fish. And I ended up, catching. I don't even remember catching 9 fish, keepers. They weighed 12 pounds, and out of 30 guys, for my first one, I guess that was okay. I don't know if we even got money back then if you didn't place high, but I don't remember. The one thing I've noticed through these first series of magazines we've done back in time, the non-existence of a willow leaf blade on spinnerbaits. This is the weed wader. Okay, it eventually is that was. If you looked at Elroy Kruger's favorite spinnerbait, it was Elroy's. Tommy Martin's favorite was a weed wader, but they had Indiana blades. The most common blade you see now, if you go back there, and I might have missed one, but were Colorados or Indianas. And that's when I really started, and Elroy was the science behind the spinnerbait. He really started, he said water displacement is the whole key to spinnerbait. Water displacement is moving the water away from the lure, and that's what affects the lateral line of a bass, and he's so accurate. And so you can fool it, if a blade has a lot of water displacement, you can fool a big bass that wants something bigger. He thinks it's bigger than it is. Willow leaf don't push a lot of water. And that's why I loved the willow leaf eventually, because of the flash and the way it looked. And I like the name willow leaf. But that's not real scientific reasons to fish it. So that's why I eventually that's part of the reason I came with the Trickster spinnerbait, which has the long drop blade that I designed. It's a combination willow leaf and Indiana. It has the flash of a willow leaf, but it has a water displacement of an Indiana, which is really what catches the big fish, in my opinion. Oh, this was the year I'll never forget, 1975, and we're starting my second year on the BassMaster Trail.